Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Atlantic Bushcraft Adventures. Tonight we are on episode 296, and we are talking a little bit about protection from the ground. So what are some things you can use? Why is it important to you? And in a pinch, what can you do to substitute? So this was kind of your topic there, Ben. So as we were talking, before we came on, like we normally do, why don't you lead us down your thought process here? I think I know what you're going for, but why don't you tell everybody else?
Well, it's just this is one of the topics that is a lot of times misunderstood, and people don't understand the true gravity of it. And people worry about their sleeping bags, they worry about the blankets they're going to wear, they worry about all kinds of stuff to go on top of them. But a large percentage, and I can't remember the exact number, I'm sure we could Google it. There's a large percent of the body or the heat loss you can suffer from is into the ground. So if you were to just sit on the ground or lie on the ground with nothing between you and the ground, it can suck a lot of heat out of you. And that's a lot of energy. So when you're out doing stuff, you want to preserve that energy. You want to stay, warm and comfortable. Protecting yourself from the ground is really important. And people do this for a lot of means. One very common one is sit pads, which is just some piece of foam or something that you can place on the ground and put between you and the ground when you're sitting down. When you're sleeping, it's the air mattress, it's the cot, it's whatever that you put between you and the ground. But if it's a cot, you still need something underneath you because the air below you will steal heat too. And we've talked about this when we talk about quilts and sleeping bags, and that crushing of the insulation removes the R value of it, and you can get cold really quick. Also, the ground is oftentimes wet, and we know if you're wet and cold, it's not great. So protecting yourself from the moisture that will come out of the ground, and almost year-round, if you sit on the ground, you're probably going to be damp on anything that was touching the ground, unless it's extremely dry. And so you have to protect yourself from the ground. Believe it or not, it seems odd, but you do, especially in longer-term situations like multi-day trips or whatever. If you're out and you're going around and you're starting to find yourself cold, even if you're just lost and you say, I'll huddle up under this tree, that ground you're sitting on can be very uncomfortable after a very short period of time, and it saps that energy. So how do we protect ourselves? What do we do? And there's a lot we can do. So I mentioned a few of them, and we can talk a little about the little sit pads. You may want to do it.
Well, I have a very common one, and that's why I kind of grabbed this one. And if we're going to talk about sit pads, much like you said, there's definitely many different styles. And kind of like what you were hinting at, the best thing you can look for in one of these is something that doesn't crush too easily, because if you're a fluffy fellow like myself, that's a lot of weight pushing down on a real small area, right? So things made out of foam tend to be really good because they trap a lot of air inside. When they compress, they hold a lot of that rigidity. Now, I'm not talking like memory foam. Memory foam happens to crush down pretty good unless you got something else under that. But like, what's that, melamine foam or neoprene foam is what I'm thinking of. Yeah. Basically, you can buy that stuff at the dollar store, and I was trying to find one. I know Mel has one around here somewhere, can't find it. But another big one is things like these, just literally from the hunting section off Walmart, Canadian Tire, any of those big box marts. It's like just a nylon bag with those little foam beads out of the old beanbag chairs. You know what I mean? These work awesome for what they are. They're a little goofy and a little cumbersome, though. What's that?
You can look them up. Usually hot seat, I think, is... I got 2 or 3.
I think that's what this actually... Well, this just says thermo sport seat.
Yeah. But, yeah, that's exactly a good example. If you're out and you have to sit on the ground, if you have to sit on a log or something outside, there's a good chance it's quite cold. It's going to be very similar to the air temperature. And if you're talking this time of year, it's oftentimes not only cold but damp. And you know, you get a frosty morning or a really cold morning, and that the frost is really set into the ground, and you have that permafrost stuff going on. It takes a lot to heat that little bit of ground up underneath you, and it's going to steal a lot of heat before it does that. So if you can put something between you and the ground that is water resistant or proof, so something that's impervious to moisture, and then something that creates a nice air cushion between you and the ground, that it can retain some of that heat, that's going to make it a lot better for you. Um, and you won't always get a perfect solution, but those are the properties I'm looking for. I'm looking for something that's not going to absorb the moisture and is going to provide an insulation between me and the ground. And it's for comfort. I have heard a good ground cover that protects you from the ground is more effective than the sleeping bag you put over the top of you. So if you went out and you had to choose one of the two, chances are the clothes you have on and a good ground cover will keep you warmer than a good sleeping bag and nothing underneath you.
No, and building on that thought process, as first responders, during ice rescue training, sometimes it is more beneficial for us to take the blanket from a recovered individual and put under them to separate them from the ground, much like you're saying, then put it over them. It does rely on a few factors like wind chill and things like that. But in a room, outside, little wind, fairly sunny, it's generally a lot better to put it under them because you are losing so much significant more heat from that conductivity. I mean, basically what you're sitting on, be it the snow, the dirt, the log, the whatever, it's acting like a massive heat sink. It pulls that heat from you, disperses it out, your body tries to hurriedly replenish that to warm up that spot so it doesn't freeze, and it's amazing how cold you can get just by sitting on the ground. Like the rest of your body, yeah, your butt's going to get a little cold, a little numb, but your fingers will start getting colder faster. Your ears will start getting cold faster. Your toes will start getting cold faster. It's a chain reaction, kind of snowball effect that a lot of people, as you said way back at the beginning, don't appreciate.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, anything you're physically touching is going to steal heat from you faster than anything that you're not. Like your radiant heat isn't nearly as powerful as that direct conduction heat. So, by directly touching it, that heat is being conducted directly to that other object. So, and that's the whole point of this. And this probably won't be the longest episode, but I think it's really important. If you're getting out and doing something, to think about that, of how you're going to deal with that. And the easy solution is sometimes to take something. A solution I have used is just the tarp. Ball the tarp up and sit it down. You end up with a bit of insulation and that moisture resistance, and you can sit on that, and that'll make you significantly warmer than just sitting directly on the ground. So there's a relatively easy one. If you have a tarp, ball it up so it's kind of in a rough shape, and just sit on it. Roll one of those big polyvinyl style tarps up, and you can. It sort of resists crushing a bit better than some of the nylon and polyester. More expensive ones we buy, but that alone will work. Any tarp will keep moisture off of you from the ground, so that really works. Even taking an item of clothing and bundling that up and throwing it in, especially like a dry bag, it's an impromptu one. It works very well and adds no more weight. If you were already taking a dry bag full of clothing, and you just sit that on the ground and then sit on that, that's already stuff that you were carrying anyways, and it'll offer you that protection, right?
100%. And you kind of beat me to the punch on that one. I was going to say a great substitute that I use, my clothes, because it always comes in a dry bag. And I guess adding on to that a little more is try to refrain from the urge to sit on your actual your pack. You know what I mean? Like in a pinch, it is better than sitting on the ground. But if you're sitting on that, you're driving that, once again, down into that dirt, into that moisture. It's going to transfer in. Then when you put it back on your back, now all you're doing is basically putting it right onto your back. You know what I mean? So if it did get wet, now you got moisture sticking to the back of you the entire time you're out there. And this isn't just for the winter. This is during the summer or anything. You know what I mean? At the bare minimum, it's going to make you uncomfortable. So having something along with you that substitute that is always great. And like Ben said, dry bag with your clothes in it. You just pop it out, crush it down. That way, there's no air in it. You're not going to pop it, anything like that. Have a seat. Once you're done, you get up. You can generally brush that off. And I mean, in some cases, I may take my sleeve and wipe it off, if it got wet or something like that, or a rag or something else. But then it's dry and it goes right back in the pack and no harm, no foul. Your pack's still dry because you hung it in a tree or whatever the case may be. It's an amazing little thought or something that most people may not think about. I've actually been camping with folks. Everybody's sitting around complaining about the cold. Me sitting on my dry bag with my clothes going, why don't you just sit on your clothes? And you get that little, oh, I just never thought of that. because nobody ever put, the bug in their head about it.
Yeah, no, I think it's a fairly common one. It's a neat, easy to do thing, because we're always looking, how do we reduce the bulk? And that hot seat you have there, or that thermal seat, that does take up room. That's about the size of a 2-year hot bar.
It's not the thickest, but I mean, compared to my chest, that's still not gonna, you know what I mean? No matter how much I ball that up, that's not gonna get any smaller than that.
No.
Another great little thing, just while I have it, because I have it out here, is sometimes the dollar store has these things. And this doubles up. This is just one of their little, cheap little pillows, which, frankly, I hate as a pillow, but they work great as a seat. Throw it in, well, I guess you can't get these anymore. I was going to say, throw it inside a grocery bag, because long before dry bags, grocery bags were plentiful. I used to keep mine and use them as dry bags inside my backpack. You would throw one of these inside a grocery bag, and bam, you have a waterproof seat that you can sit on, and it's perfectly enjoyable. So if you can find a bag, I mean, you could wrap it. Drum liner, we always recommend that you have a drum liner or something with you. Like, there is options in some of the gear that you have there where you still may be able to make this work, and if you are okay with it, you can still use this as your pillow, and it's pulling double duty once again.
The other thing, so if you have a plastic bag, and yes, you can't get grocery bags like you used to be able to, but you can still buy garbage bags. And you can buy garbage bags of almost any size. And it never hurts to have a few plastic bags around. I mean, plastic bags have a lot of purposes. You can carry water in them if you have to in a pinch. Don't think it's an ideal method. They will eventually spring leaks and break and stuff, but you can in a pinch. But also, even if you didn't have, say, the pile of clothing, if you can get some dry leaves, and fill a bag with that, it works the same effect. And sort of like when you're sleeping, a lot of people have talked to me about like debris mattresses. Like you build up your debris mattress, and it takes a lot, or bow mattresses. The one thing to keep in mind is you want to keep them as dry as possible. So if you cut green boughs, there's moisture in that, and you want to keep that off you. Plus, the sap's going to come out, and it's going to get into your stuff, and it's going to make it rough. So if you have a piece of plastic or a tarp or something you can put between you and that, and what you do is you kind of make like a taco out of it. You lay part of your tarp down, you put all your bedding material on top, and then you roll your tarp over the top of that, and then you lay on the top of that, and that helps keep that cushion between you. It helps contain everything, and that becomes a great seat, a great bed. It creates a spot, like if you create a bed, it's a couch, 3 people can sit in it pretty comfortably, and it's an effective method. Like I said, the caveat here is try to find the driest material you can find and the lightest, fluffiest material you can find. Theoretically, I've seen this. It's a hard dandelion, the puffy parts of dandelion. If you can get a lot of those, release them. They make a very down-like substance.
I imagine they would, but you'd be collecting them half the day. But once again, if you have time and the resource, use what you got.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot. Like, it's going to take more than 1 or 2 heads of it. But when you break it open, they do make a lot. But yeah, anything that keeps you off the ground directly and gives you that protection from the moisture in the environment, it's really going to help your comfort. So when you're out there, this is the thing. Think about this. It's, there's all the ways we think about trying to keep ourselves warm. One of them is to avoid sitting on cold surfaces and avoid laying on them. And how do you do that? You need a solution. Now, it's the more high-tech solution. I'm going to go with, the insulated air mattresses, the really ultralight ones. We've been using, I think you used the same one, the Hibernate.
And what do I just happen to have here?
Yeah.
We are not sponsored by these, but this is an amazing mattress system for what it's worth.
We've both had really good luck with ours. I've met a couple of people that weren't as satisfied with them, but me and you have been very happy with them. Something like that. I mean, I know Expedition does a big one. There's a whole bunch of big companies that make them. Or that was it the Thermarest?
I was going to say Thermarest, if that's what you're trying to think of. They make foam ones too, and foam ones are perfectly good as well. Like those self-inflating foam ones. Once again, just a little bulky. You know what I mean? That's the trade-off with those, but they do work well.
Even just the old, like you say, like the foam, yeah, but even the what do you call it? Even the just the blue foamies, the dirt cheap, like $4 or $5. Just a
Not sure on the blue one. I know for the longest time, I used a piece of silver wall, like the stuff that you would put on the outside of your house before you put on like your siding or something like that for the outside insulation. There, I had a leftover piece of that from a project I did, and for the longest time, I ran some tape over that to hold it together, and that was my sleeping pad and everything, and it worked amazing.
the blue foam mattress you can get at Walmart, Canadian Tire, dirt cheap.
Oh yeah, like
Everyone
Woods and Woods makes one. Coleman makes one. They're literally yoga mat is kind of a trade off to one of those things.
Yeah, but they're 3 times thicker than the yoga mat.
Yeah.
Not that that's thick, but yeah, 3 to 4 times thicker, and they're around forever, and they're very light. They don't pack down well, but what a lot of people would do is just roll it as big as they could inside their pack, and then poke everything inside of it, and it just gets shaped to their pack. So in those cases, people said it didn't take up that much room. But anything like that really does work. You mentioned the silver wall, something that works shockingly well, especially in hammocks and stuff. The windscreen heat reflectors that you can get for your cars. I've used those. You just put it under your torso, and it makes a difference. If you slide off of that in the middle of the night, you're going to feel the difference. It's really cold once you go off of it. You wouldn't think that made such a big difference, but it does. That little air pockets and the reflectiveness just traps that heat there with you, and you sleep much more comfortable with that between you and the air in a hammock. But yeah, you can put that on the ground and sit on it, and it's going to make a difference. It provides that thermal and that moisture barrier to keep you a little bit warmer.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Silverwall. All it is styrofoam with like mylar on the outside of it. And just to give you an idea of how well this stuff works, in the old, I don't want to say the old days because I may be dating myself here, but it wasn't uncommon if you had an outside pump or something like that, hand pump or whatever, you would just build a box out of Silverwall. Use some framing to hold it in, like stickers is what we used to call them, but I think they, like 1x1s, 2x2s, whatever you want to call it. You build a box and you put a 60-watt light bulb inside it, put it around whatever your pump is, seal it. That'll never freeze. You know what I mean? It keeps out the air and it insulates with the heat so well that literally a 60-watt bulb, and I'm not talking an LED bulb here, folks, I'm talking like the old-fashioned bulbs that actually gave off heat, it would keep everything warm. We used to use them to keep the pumps, like I said, the old water pumps, hand pumps ready, usually around the horses, cattle, things like that. I've seen them go around air compressors in really cold climates, just to keep the oil from actually turning to an absolute sludge. We used to use them in welding a bit to keep the welding sticks dry. You know what I mean? Like, it's surprising what it will do. And backtracking just a second before I forget my thought process, you were talking about using some natural stuff and putting it under you. Yeah, it's damp and stuff like that. Another thing to remember, folks, is if you're going to do something like that, it has to be fairly thick. Don't put down an inch worth of boughs and think that you were going to get great insulation out of that. I think rule of thumb is start around 6 inches. And then add to that, you know what I mean, depending on your size and your weight. So somebody like my weight, bumping up against 300 pounds, I'm probably going to need more like 8 to 10 inches to get an effective thermal insulation. Now somebody like Lily, 100 pounds soaking wet. I don't even think 100 pounds. I think she's like 80 pounds. Anyway, she could probably get away with 6 inches. You know what I mean? You seal that up. She's not compressing it that much. It still allows air. That's the secret, folks. If you can trap air, air is an amazing insulator, both against the cold and to the heat. So if you can get air trapped in your whatever you're using, that's going to help you. That's why you can ball up newspaper, jam it inside your coat, and it's going to keep you warm. It's the air that your body's already heating up, and then that paper stops from escaping away from you, that's keeping you warm.
Yeah, and it's exactly it. I was always told, once you figure you have enough, double it. So if you're doing boughs, you're knocking down a few trees. Like, trust me, it's somebody with the scouts was telling me I think it's like 6 Christmas trees makes one bed.
That would be about right. I tried to make a bough bed once and just had my pocket knife and said, I'll just, exact thought process. I'll just pick off the bottom limbs, won't hurt nothing. I'm going to have a beautiful bed. Yeah. No, it does
One
not
course
work that
later.
way. Bring an axe and prepare to work for a while.
Yeah. Uh, I've seen people try to do it with hay too, or like dry grasses. So if you come across a field full of dry grasses, you're going to be gathering quite a few armloads up and coming back and throwing them down. And once you lay on it, you're going to see it crushes a lot, and you're going to have to go out and get that much more. But it does work. It is a very effective method, but it does take a fair amount. But here's the thing. It takes energy to do this, yes. But if you're spending 2, 3, 4 nights, it's worth it because you're going to lose so much more energy each night just to the cold. So if you can save that energy by providing that barrier and preventing that heat from being lost to the ground, then the rest of your shelter is so much easier to warm. So if you have a shelter, you know, a debris shelter above you, or if you have a tent, or if you can throw a emergency blanket over the top of that, you can keep that heat in there so much better. But if it's getting sucked out of the ground, it's gone. And everyone's been in a house with cold floors, and someone once told me, said, if you got cold floors, you got a cold house. No matter how much heat you pump into the rest of the house, if the floors are cold, you're cold. And it's completely true. Put on a pair of shoes and you feel so much warmer in a place with cold floors because you've protected yourself from losing the heat to that ground. And like you said, you got a solid connection to that. That weight of our body connects us to it, and we transfer that heat quite quickly. So that's sort of a subject that I wanted to hit on. Like,
Just before we finish up, I have one product I kind of wanted to throw out there for people. It's something that I found. It was gifted to me, Christmas present. And I'm going to be completely serious and honest with you folks. When I first got it, I said, this is too... I took it nicely and said thank you, but in the back of my mind, I was like, this is too big. I'm never actually going to use this. And then I took it once to one of the cabin campings, and I was like, holy crap, this thing works good. And then I started attaching it to the bottom of my bag, and now it's basically with me as soon as I go in the woods. And it kind of pulls a bunch of different duties. And it's this thing. And this one specifically is literally just a Dakota ground blanket. You know what I mean? Like, this is not Dakota outdoorsy stuff. This is Dakota, like, where the hell do you buy Dakota? They make boots and stuff like that. You know what I mean? I can't remember if it's Canadian Tire or Mark's Work Warehouse, which is basically, or not Mark's Work Warehouse. Yeah, Mark's Work Warehouse. I think that's what it's called.
maybe?
Yeah, I think it's their line of stuff. But anyway, that's where this came from, I'm going to assume. I never really asked. But it is this outside, like, canvas waterproof material, and then inside is like lambskin.
Oh, yeah?
And you know what? It's not very thick. It doesn't weigh a whole lot. It is fairly bulky. You know what I mean? Like, you are taking another sleeping bag or a sleeping mat. And in a lot of cases, this has been replacing my sleeping mat if I know I'm going to be, like, on the hammock or somewhere where I'm going to be laying on something. I don't know if anybody else has that feeling of when you jump on an air mattress, like, you know, the big Walmart air mattresses, you blow them up. If you spend the night, you always wake up feeling damp because those air mattresses hold moisture. They create a vapor barrier. This gets rid of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This keeps your body heat from going down into that air mattress, making that hot, cold, all that condensation and stuff like this. And I mean, this became a godsend. Sitting on the ground, I literally just keep it rolled up like this, throw it down, sit on it, and away I go. I keep this side up. The bottom side's already waterproof. I go over it sometimes with waterproofing just to keep it up. But other than that, I sit on it like this. That stays dry. There's a handle on it. This just gets attached to the bottom of my bag. And that's exactly how it goes on. It just sits like that, or sometimes, depending on the pack, I will put it on the top. But most times it's on the bottom. Keeps it down low because it does have a tendency to sway. And I don't like it beating the back of the head.
I think I showed this. I have a wool blanket that I sewed a ripstop nylon backing on.
Same kind of deal.
Same idea. It's a warm substance with a waterproofing outer back. I can roll that out. I can sort of tackle myself into it. Same idea we talked about before. But I love it. It's something that I often take. It is kind of bulky. It isn't perfect. But man, does it offer you a comfort. And then when I'm out, if I can get a good sit pad, I throw it over my shoulders. It keeps the wind off me and it keeps me nice and dry. It's long enough I can kind of poke some of it underneath me and to cover myself up if I want to. It's just a little tight for that. But a good protection of the ground and the environment really helps. And all this is to tell people to be aware the ground steals heat really badly. And so if you can protect yourself from it, if you're cognizant of that threat when you're out there, it really can protect you and help you be that much more comfortable. And if you're going with somebody who's not used to being out there and they don't know this, you can really make the difference between them being miserable and uncomfortable and being happy and enjoying it. So if you're out and you can keep them off the wet, cold ground and be comfortable, they really like it. There are other means you can do for sure, but yeah, providing that protection between the ground and yourself really does make it much more comfortable. If you're not wet and cold, you're much happier, I guarantee you.
100%. And we have one question. And I know you have to take off there, Ben, so we're going to answer this one quick bit. I know it's going to be a common question that a lot of people are going to ask. So Steve, the Drifting Spore asks, so would an actual air mattress work? Like the Walmart style blow up that keep you insulated? Would it keep you insulated from the ground? I'm trying to dream up a cheap DIY winter sleep system. And anyway, to address that question, my experience, and I'm going to get Ben to weigh in on this, and then we're going to sign off for the night, is I find the air mattresses that you're talking about are great for comfort. They don't offer a lot of thermal value. Now, if you can somehow insulate yourself against the air mattress, it does work fairly well. That way you don't have that transfer of heat like we were just talking about. If you lay directly on that air mattress, you're going to be comfortable, but you're going to lose about the exact same heat, maybe a little less than what you were on the ground. Worst thing is just that your body heat kind of condenses any of the moisture, especially if you use your lungs to blow up these air mattresses, which a lot of people do because they don't have a pump. There's a lot of moisture in there. Your body heat, it's going to collect. It comes up through, and you always end up feeling wet. You know what I mean? So you have to, once again, insulate yourself from the air mattress so you don't get that temperature differential. So, my opinion, they add a ton of comfort. They don't add a lot of R value. Your thoughts, Ben?
Yeah, so my thought is similar. It is definitely warmer than laying directly underground. But what you do have for sure is most of those are what, 4 and 6 and 8 inches thick. Like, they're thick. All that air will warm up more than the air that's just free flowing. But if you're trying to heat, 8 inches thick, 6 foot long, and 3-4 foot wide, it takes a lot of heat to make that even room temperature. So you're going to feel cold for a long time before you've heated that up, and it still has a large surface area, so it's also radiating heat out into the ground, so it's losing heat. So something with some kind of like closed foam or open foam insulation inside makes a difference. That the reflective material makes a difference. Like you said, anything that's truly waterproof right against your skin is going to be clammy and uncomfortable. And that's going to affect that too. I mean, there's a couple of things we can get into of how a vapor barrier can provide more heat in some ways than insulation, but the clamminess and uncomfortableness doesn't help either. So there's an experiment where somebody uses just latex gloves outside and then puts regular gloves over it, and how much warmer it is. It does work, trust me, but it's not the most comfortable solution. So if you're going to do that, you're still probably going to be trying to put some wool blankets or something under you to add to that comfort. And that's going to both give you that breathability and sort of an insulation from the air mattress itself, which will slowly rob heat from you in a manner not unlike the other one, just because of the volume. That's why the small ultralight ones with insulation do work a little bit better, because there is so much less air to heat up.
And they usually do them in individual cells. They are joined, but it's a lot of individual cells, and that way they're not, the ones that are directly against you tend to hold their heat better, because they're not just open to a big air. Even though the air is not moving, that heat is still flowing through there, and it'll go to the, heat rises, cold drops, and you get this big, it creates its own air currents inside. I mean, it's not going to be windy in there, but it does have thermal movement. And if you reduce that down into individual cells, you tend to trap the heat a lot more longer.
And if you have a sleeping bag, some of that sleeping bag material fills in those cracks, and it provides an insulation value there, so it adds to that pad. So those shapes, those dips and holes kind of work. I'm trying to remember the one who made it. I have one by the company. but it had the inertia X, I think it was called, and it missed. Like it only had tubes where the body had a lot of pressure, and others it's completely open, and that completely open spaces would fill in with sleeping bag material and provide that insulation. So it was a really interesting one. So again, the less air, the better, as long as you provide that distance between you and the cold surface. And you're still looking for 2 to 3 inches for sure, right? But could it work? Yes. Is it as good? No. If you heated the air around you, like if you're in a hot tent, you might find it not quite as bad. I would probably go with a cheap cot and just a foam mattress as a cheaper, better option to get you off the ground and then insulate you from the air underneath your tarp or your cot.
And if you are set on the air mattress, because a lot of people like them because, you know, they do provide a lot of comfort, once again, back to the foam pad on top of it, and they'll give you that thermal barrier between the two, and you get the best of both worlds, but you also got twice the bulk. Food for thought.
Yeah.
Anyway,
for sure.
hopefully we answered your question there, Steve. Thank you for asking it, because I knew it would probably come up, and I was hoping for somebody to ask, and you did it for me. So I appreciate it, man. But I think that's where we're going to wrap it up here for tonight. We are on our 30 minutes. Any final closing thoughts there, Ben?
No, like as always, get out there, have fun, enjoy it, test some things. Let us know how it works for you.
Sounds good. And just like Ben, get out there, have fun, folks. We'll see you next week. Night, everybody.